Hey guys, MBSC one again. There was the last regional championship series last weekend, and I used Seismitoad Giratina for San Jose regionals. Me and two other people also used it. One of the other people that used it was my friend Michael Perez, and he ended up getting top 32, and then I got 10th place with it. So this is the list that we all used. I should also note that there was 3 cards that I would have changed if I could have done it differently after the tournament, so I will include those 3 changes at the end of the deck list, just in case you guys want to make those changes too. As always, we will start with a Pokemon. There is 3 Seismitoad EX, just like the mat. This is just going to be your main attacker. You also have Giratina as an attacker, but in many matchups you will use Seismitoad for about 90% of the game, and then maybe close the matchup with a Chaos Wheel with Giratina or something like that, but almost all the time Seismitoad is just going to be the attacker you're using pretty much the entire game, unless you're going against a deck with Mega Pokemon, in which case you might use Giratina for a little bit, but this is still very much a Seismitoad deck, and it needs to be played like one as well. So 3 Seismitoad. The reason I don't include 4 is just because this deck has 4 Super Scoop Up and then Keldeo with a Float Stone, so it's not as important to start with Seismitoad, and it actually is not something you want to start with in a lot of matchups because you want to just Super Scoop Up something else and then bring up the Seismitoad so that laser damage or the initial attack or something doesn't hurt the Seismitoad. So just 3 Seismitoad, then 2 Shaman. Initially, this deck had 3 Shaman, but I ended up cutting the 3rd one for 1 Jirachi EX so that you can search out all the 1-ofs in this deck and the weird tech supporters. I definitely like Jirachi and 2 Shaman. I think it was very much worth it, and I do not think I would ever change that count. I think it's pretty much perfect. 2 Giratina EX. This is your other attacker, well, one of your other attackers. This is pretty much just good against Mega Pokemon, also great against decks that rely on double colorless energy. If you can Chaos Wheel, then they can't attach any double colorless energy, which is really helpful. Also good against Groudon because they can't put down stadiums. Also because Groudon can't attack Giratina since it is a Mega Pokemon. Keldeo, just so you can rush in and retreat, just maneuver around your bench as easily as you can. Very helpful. I only had 2 Float Stones. That is one of the changes I made. I went up to 3 because just having the 3rd one makes it very consistent. It's important to go up to 3 in my opinion, but you can survive with 2, and I did because it still got me 10th even with 2. But that is all. Latias, because Tyrantrum got like 9th, I believe, in Pennsylvania the weekend before the 3rd week. So I knew that some people were going to run Metal or Tyrantrum decks, which had Aegislash. And Aegislash is really hard for this deck to deal with, and Latias is sort of a tech for that because its ability Bright Down says that you prevent all attacks, including damage, done to this Pokemon, or prevent all effects, excuse me, but any damage and effects done from Pokemon with abilities to Latias don't do anything. So Aegislash, since it has Mighty Shield, cannot do any damage to Latias. And then on top of that, its attack Barrier Break does 70, and it goes through any effects on the defending Pokemon, meaning that Mighty Shield will not stop my attack, so I can still have special energy on it and still do damage to it. So that's why I included Latias. I also think it's just a good Pokemon in general to have against certain decks. Like I imagined that it could be useful against Virizion Genesect, but I never played against it because the main attackers in Virizion Genesect both have abilities. So basically, none of them can attack Latias. But yeah, it's mostly just there for Aegislash. And I don't think I actually didn't go against any Tyrantrum decks, but it was evident that they were going to be played somewhere because it did win the British Columbia regionals, I believe, that weekend. So I'm not too mad that I used this in my deck because I do know that Metal was a good deck, and it just turned out that for some reason people didn't want to use it in California. But overall, I'm happy with it. I think I would cut it if I could do it again, though, just because, nobody actually ended up using it. And I really had no way of knowing that, though, so. These are the draw support cards and other supporters, and then the stadiums. So 2 Verbank because I could not really fit in a 3rd one. I wanted a 3rd one, but I think 2 is enough. Silent Lab is also a good idea in this deck, that should be noted, but I did not run it. 4 Sycamore, just because it's basically your best draw supporter in this deck. Yeah, 4 is pretty obvious. 2N, I wanted a 3rd, I just couldn't fit it, but 3 would have been really nice. I think that is one of the things I would have changed. 4 Verse Seeker, just because you have all these supporters and all these 1 or only 2 ofs, especially N, that you want to get back with Verse Seeker, so it's important to have 4. One gets us because of Archie's Blastoise. If you go first against Archie's Blastoise and you have a Jirachi or an Ultra Ball or the Getsus, you can Stellar Guidance for Getsus and play it, or just play it from your hand. And then that almost guarantees that you are going to win that matchup, actually, because that means that they are not going to get Archies on their first turn unless they get insanely lucky. And that means that probably next turn you're going to be able to Quaking Punch to follow that up and make sure that they can never get the Archies. So pretty much if you can get turn 1 gets this against any Archies deck, you win. One Hex Maniac because this deck does kind of have a damage output problem sometimes, and a lot of that stems from people being able to rush in and retreat out of Hypnotoxic Laser or somehow use abilities to get out of the poison. So Hex Maniac makes it so that they can't do that. They can't use Keldeo or Darkrai or anything like that. So that's why I have it in there, as well as it being good against Aegislash and Metal decks, because I knew that that was going to be really tough for me to beat, so I kind of wanted to tech a little bit harder against it. So yeah, one Hex Maniac. One Team Flare Grunt, just because it's just a good card in general. Helps a lot against other Toad decks, and it's just good against pretty much anything for denying energy. I found it very useful. Also very helpful against Yveltal decks in particular. But yeah, I used a lot and definitely wouldn't take it out. 2 Xerosic. This is one of the weirdest changes I made. Nobody else was really running 2 Xerosic, but I thought it was very important. A lot of people wanted to tech in a second Flare Grunt instead of a second Xerosic to help against the Toad Mirror, because they felt like 2 Flare Grunt would be more helpful against all decks instead of just 2 Xerosic, which is mostly just helpful against Toad. But actually, 2 Xerosic is good against a lot of things, and people didn't really realize that because so many things in Expanded are running special energy that Xerosic is actually even more helpful against other techs than Team Flare Grunt a lot of the time. Even if I was not trying to prepare for Toad and I had to run one more Flare Grunt or one more Xerosic, I'd probably go with the one more Xerosic because it is great. It's just an amazing card. Just being able to get rid of tools or special energy is super powerful. You can even get rid of your own Headringer sometimes, which is very useful. Getting rid of the Floatstone on Keldeo is very, very helpful. I love it. 2 Xerosic is probably staying in this deck for a long time. It is. I don't run Tool Scrapper though, so that should be noted that 2 Xerosic, in my opinion, is better than 1 Tool Scrapper and 1 Xerosic. So that's just a change I like, but you don't necessarily have to do it that way. I think 2 Xerosic is definitely better though. Enough about that. 2 Lysander, you don't really need more than that. I think 2 is enough. Yeah, 2 is pretty standard at this point, and that's it for the draw and supporters and stadiums. These are the items for the deck. Quite a few. A lot of energy denial cards in here. 4 Crushing Hammer and 1 Enhanced Hammer and 2 Headringer is very thick for denying energy, and I found that it is pretty much necessary for this deck. People don't really look at it like this a lot of the time, but this deck is more of a lock-in energy denial deck than anything, in my opinion. The Crushing Hammers were crucial. I mean, very important. I love them. I never would take them out. 4 is perfect in my opinion. Enhanced Hammer has been amazing, especially against Vespiquen decks, because if they can put enough energy down early game or something like that before you can Chaos Wheel, sometimes that can be troublesome. Enhanced Hammer is just really good against things in general. Also good against Toad decks if you're in the lead and they try to attach energy and they can't Quaking Punch, you can Enhanced Hammer that off. That happened to me multiple times. Good against just Groudon before they can Mega Evolve. Just tons of things Enhanced Hammer is very helpful against. Oh, also good against Yveltal. Just 1 is a great little tech that you can use, and I found it very useful in a lot of matchups. 2 Headringer. The original list for this deck that did well in like the maybe it was a German tournament, the something Arena Cup, they had 3, but I cut that down to 2 because I felt like 3 was a little clumpy, and it was I just found it kind of unnecessary, and I felt like other energy denial was better. I think that the 1 Enhanced Hammer is what I put in for the second, or instead of the 3rd Headringer, which I feel is much stronger. 2 Floatstone, just for Keldeo so you can rush and retreat. I think 2 is not enough, and that's pretty much it. You really need 3, in my opinion. 2 Muscle Band. I was fine with this, frankly. I kind of like a 3rd, but it's not a real big priority to put in, and I think 2 was, in general, good enough. Laser damage is going to do most of your work for you anyway, and the muscle bands were crucial at some points, but with all the scoop ups and shamans and the fast draw on this deck, you can usually get into the muscle bands when you need them with only 2. And then 4 super scoop up to pick up any damaged Seismitoad or any damaged Pokemon, as well as shamans, so you can keep drawing cards. Also useful a lot of the time when my Floatstone was either prized or discarded. so I couldn't use Keldeo, so that my opponents often would Lysander something up while they're Quaking Punch locked, and then I could super scoop it up and then keep Quaking Punching. So that actually helped me a lot. It's also good for conserving double dragon energy and float stones. There was a couple occasions where on my first turn, going first, one particular occasion where I attached a double dragon and a float stone to my Latias, and then 2 turns later, I super scoop up the Latias and the float stone, and then put the float stone on my Keldeo and the double dragon on my Giratina, and that was incredibly helpful. So super scoop ups are very good in this deck. I don't think I would ever go down to less than 4. For Hypnotoxic Laser, this is your main damage modifier. Quaking Punch is obviously your main attack, but lasers probably end up doing more damage than the actual Quaking Punch themselves. This deck basically locks your opponent out of being able to use energy. It just locks them out as much stuff as you can. So when you deny them things like Switch and Float Stone, and even abilities sometimes with Hex and things like that, then lasers end up racking up a lot of damage, and it's harder for them to get out of the poison. And then 4 Crushing Hammer, I already explained. 4 Ultra Ball just to fetch any of your Pokemon. I don't run Hoopa in this deck, so 4 is crucial. I don't like Hoopa, and I don't think I'll ever put it in. I don't think it's necessary. I think it takes up too much bench space, and it's just not worth it in the long run, in my opinion. But that's not in the list anyway. 1 Computer Search just for consistency. Rock Guard would have been kind of cool, but I think this deck really just needs consistency. Consistency is just very important to me, and I think that it's better than Rock Guard. And for the energy, just 4 Double Colorless and 3 Double Dragon. I'll go over those 3 cards that I would change right after this. 4 Double Colorless is obvious because you just need to Quaking Punch the whole time. It also fuels Giratina's attack. I think anything less than 4 Double Colorless is ridiculous. I don't really need to explain 4, I feel like. 3 Double Dragon is kind of strange. I know some people actually just went with 2 because they were using Giratina so little. I think 3 is definitely needed, though, because when you use Giratina, you need to have 3 Double Dragon in your deck. I know that I have prized 1 Double Dragon sometimes against Mega decks, and it has been very bad for me. So I think 3 is absolutely necessary. I almost thought about going to 4, actually, but I think 3 is probably enough. It should be noted, though, that Black Kyurem is an interesting inclusion in this deck that I thought of. You could put in 1 Black Kyurem instead of like a Latios or Latias or something like that, so that when you're not using your Giratina for your Double Dragon energy, you can still power up something with a Double Dragon energy on the bench. So that's a cool little tech I came up with. You can try it if you want, but if you are going to do that, I would probably go up to 4 Double Dragon energy. And that is it for the energy. These are the 3 cards I would have changed if I could have done it again. Like I just said, the Black Kyurem would have been cool, so I would have liked to exchange the Latias for a Black Kyurem. I just found that Floatstone was more important than Black Kyurem because you really need that consistency, and Black Kyurem isn't going to be super important, so I did cut the Latias for a Floatstone in my new list. I cut Getsis because it didn't really help that much, and even when it did help, it's always kind of a risk, so I don't really like risks if I don't have to take them, so that's why I did take out the Getsis, and it didn't really help me against Archie's when I did play against it anyway, and Archie's is kind of unpopular, so I don't think Getsis is really necessary for this meta at the moment, although it is a great card and should definitely be thought about at a later time, but just right now I think Getsis should not be used. And then I cut 1 Hex for 1 Silent Lab because they essentially do the same thing and they're there for the same purpose. One thing that my friend Michael pointed out to me was that you can use Giratina with Silent Lab and then make it so that they cannot put down any stadiums. So I do think that Silent Lab is probably a better way to go than Hex Maniac. And I did find that I didn't use Hex Maniac very much during the tournament anyway, and it was usually just a dead card. So I think Silent Lab is probably going to be more helpful more of the time, and that's why I put it in instead. So these are the changes I made. Other than that, I think the list is pretty much as good as it can get. You just need to change different cards depending on the meta and things like that. But altogether, I like it a lot. Alright, that is my list. Just so you guys know about the website, a lot of people were asking me how it's going or when I'm going to have it up. I'm currently still designing it, and I'm doing the layout and things like that. I'm making content for it so that when it goes up, I will have content. And I'm working with my friend Ryan. He does web design, so I'm going to partner with him, hopefully, and then he's going to do most of it so we can get it out a little more quickly, because it is taking a lot longer than I had expected. So I am trying to get it out as fast as I can for you guys, and it should the process should be accelerated now that I have someone to work with. So I'm still working on it, and it'll be out hopefully pretty soon, but I can't give any specific dates. So that's it. Thanks for watching the video. Like if you liked the video, comment if you want to tell me something, and subscribe for more.